Hey everybody, this is Andre here with the Kevin Breeze channel, and in this video, we're going to be doing a comparison between the Cricut Influence and the Samsung Galaxy A11. To get more information about the pricing and availability of the phones, definitely check the link in the description. Let's get started. So the Cricut Influence has a 6.2-inch LCD display with a resolution of 720p, a PPI of 271, and an aspect ratio of 19:9. We got a water drop front-facing camera here, and this camera is 5 megapixels. The Samsung Galaxy A11 has a 6.4-inch TFT display with a resolution of 720p, a PPI of 268, and an aspect ratio of 19.5:9. We got a hole punch here for the front-facing camera, and this camera is 8 megapixels. So for all intents and purposes, the quality of these displays are basically going to be the same. Neither of them really has a higher resolution than the other or anything like that. But the Samsung Galaxy A11 is a little bit bigger, as you can see here. 6.4 inches versus 6.2 inches is not going to be a huge difference, but it is enough to see. And it does also look like the bezels on the Samsung Galaxy A11 are a little bit thinner. Overall, the A11 does have a better look. It has a hole punch front-facing camera instead of the water drop notch, which gives it a much nicer, more modern look. And the phone itself is a little bit slimmer. It's a little bit more sleek. That being said, the quality of the materials does feel different as well. I would say based on the weight and the general feel, the Cricut Influence does feel like it's made of better quality materials than the Samsung Galaxy A11. Even though the A11 does look a lot better than the Cricut Influence in my opinion, the materials really do feel like just cheap plastic. Whereas even though the Cricut Influence doesn't quite look as nice and sleek and modern, it does feel better. It has a little bit more weight to it in a good way. The materials, even though this phone is also made of plastic, it feels like it's a better quality overall. But in general, both of the phones do look pretty good. Both of these phones have 32 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD card expansion, which isn't the best, but it's not bad either. In general, I do think that 64 gigabytes is more of a minimum. That being because these days, the system and apps are just getting larger and larger. So with 32 gigabytes, the system takes at least 15 gigabytes of that, if not more. So you're gonna have less than half of the space left to do anything else with. Now, if you have a lot of photos and videos and that's pretty much it, then you can expand the storage with a microSD card. But if you have a decent amount of apps, you might run into some trouble. And when the storage on the phone is almost completely full, I've noticed that sometimes there is a little bit of a difference in performance. It's not good to get too close to being completely full. So in general, more storage is better. But the reason I don't think 32 gigabytes is really that bad is because a lot of phones in this price range have much less. It's not uncommon to see a phone like these phones with only 16 gigabytes of internal storage, which I don't even know how it's even usable to have that little storage on a phone these days, because just a few basic apps alone takes up about 5 gigabytes of space. We can see right here, both of these phones have just under half of their storage being used right now. The system memory on the Samsung Galaxy A11 is taking up 8.9 gigabytes. And the system memory on the Cricut Influence is taking up 8.7 gigabytes, so not quite as high as I originally imagined, but still a lot more than I would personally feel comfortable with on a device like this with such little internal storage. So if you have a lot of photos or videos, or if you have more complex apps that take up a lot of space themselves, definitely keep this in mind, because even with the microSD card expansion, you might run into some problems with the storage. Now, neither of these phones have wireless charging or face unlock, but both of them have a fingerprint scanner located in the exact same spot. It's really nice, really convenient and easy to use. In this day and age, I view it as a requirement for a phone to have at least a fingerprint scanner or face unlock, one of the two, maybe not both, although that is preferred, because putting in a pin is so inconvenient that I would rather not have to deal with that. Now, we're gonna test out the fingerprint scanners on each device and see how they perform, starting with the Cricut Influence. And there we go, really fast and efficient. One more time. As we can see there was really no problem. It works really well. Now we're gonna try out the fingerprint scanner for the Samsung Galaxy A11. There we go, one more time. Nice. So you can see both of them work really well. My only comment about these fingerprint scanners is on the Samsung Galaxy A11, the fingerprint scanner itself isn't really indented, whereas the fingerprint scanner on the Cricut Influence is. And the reason that that might make a difference sometimes is because if you're trying to open your phone fast, if it's in your pocket or somewhere you can't see it, then you're gonna be feeling around for the spot your finger is supposed to go. And when there's a little indentation in the back, it does help a little bit with finding it and putting your finger in the right position. Because if you only put your finger on half the fingerprint scanner on the Samsung Galaxy A11, then of course it's not gonna work. And that might happen if you can't see or feel where your finger is supposed to be. But it's not that big a deal. You can still tell pretty easily. So overall, both of the fingerprint scanners are really reliable and I like both of them. Now taking a look at the rear camera setups of these phones, the Cricut Influence has a 13 megapixel rear camera and a 5 megapixel depth sensing camera. And the Samsung Galaxy A11 has a 13 megapixel rear camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So it is nice that the Samsung Galaxy A11 has an ultra wide camera. I do wish the Cricut Influence did as well, but unfortunately it doesn't. So these are a couple pictures taken by each phone. I do think, without a doubt, the Samsung Galaxy A11 does take much better pictures than the Cricut Influence, although the lighting is slightly different. This picture taken by the Cricut Influence is not too bad. It's really blurry. Even when it focused, the picture isn't very good quality. You don't really see the details that well. The colors are okay and the lighting is pretty good, but other than that, it's really not that impressive. This picture, on the other hand, taken by the Samsung Galaxy A11, for what it is, this picture is actually great. The lighting might not be as bright as the Cricut Influence's picture, but the quality with that sharpness and details is all really good, and the colors are well balanced as well. These pictures were taken with the front-facing cameras. Again, the picture taken with the Cricut Influence is a little bit blurry, whereas with the Samsung Galaxy A11, even though the highlights are a little bit on the brighter side, the details are really good and the image is sharp, and the colors are decently well balanced as well. So overall, I do think the Samsung Galaxy A11 has a much better camera. Not only is the quality of the pictures a lot better, but it also has an ultra-wide camera and the Cricut Influence doesn't, so that's another thing to keep in mind. Now as far as video recording goes, the Cricut Influence and the Samsung Galaxy A11 both can shoot in qualities up to 1080p, so nothing really special there. But again, keep in mind, the quality difference of the two cameras is going to be about the same for videos as well. Now internally, the Cricut Influence is getting 3 gigabytes of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 460 processor, and the Samsung Galaxy A11 is getting 2 gigabytes of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 450 processor. We ran Geekbench 5 benchmark tests on both of these phones, and the difference is actually pretty big. The Cricut Influence has a single core score of 250 and a multi-core score of 1277, and the Samsung Galaxy A11 has a single core score of 129 and a multi-core score of 488. So there's really no contest here. The Cricut Influence has over double the processing power of the Samsung Galaxy A11. As far as the multi-core score goes, almost triple for that matter. So as you can clearly see, the Cricut Influence is going to be much faster and more powerful than the Samsung Galaxy A11. The processor of the Samsung Galaxy A11 is really on the weaker side. You're not going to be able to do anything comfortably beyond web browsing and content consumption, and then your basic activities that you would use a phone for. Whereas the Cricut Influence, on the other hand, is going to be able to do a lot more. Content consumption and web browsing is going to be a lot faster, and it should also be able to do other things more comfortably, like photo and video editing and gaming. With video editing and gaming, I would still be a little bit careful with the Cricut Influence because I don't think it would be able to handle a whole lot, but it would still be able to do some. So definitely something to play around with. But the general idea is the Cricut Influence is much more powerful processor-wise than the Samsung Galaxy A11. The Samsung Galaxy A11 is really not going to be able to do that much extra stuff, whereas the Cricut Influence is going to be more capable. Now the Cricut Influence has a 3300 milliamp hour battery, and the Samsung Galaxy A11 has a 4000 milliamp hour battery. This is another difference that's pretty big. The Samsung Galaxy A11 is not only going to get more life per charge, but this battery is going to have a lot more longevity. Over time, as the batteries degrade, you're not going to notice it as much with the Samsung Galaxy A11 because the battery is bigger, so it's going to degrade slower. Now, in conclusion, which one of these devices is better? It's interesting with these two because these phones have strengths that are complete opposites from each other. If we're talking about processing power, if you're trying to do something like photo and video editing or gaming, then I would definitely say the Cricut Influence is going to be the better device. Anything involving a significant amount of processing power is going to be really difficult or just straight up not doable with the Samsung Galaxy A11 because its processor really isn't that strong. But with the Cricut Influence, the processor is actually really impressive for the level of this phone, and I do think it'll be able to keep up with a lot more intense activities. But if one of the most important things for you is the camera, the Samsung Galaxy A11 is definitely going to be the better device. The camera of this phone is so much better than the camera of the Cricut Influence. I wouldn't want to use the camera for the Cricut Influence for anything beyond something like Snapchat, where the quality of the photo is basically meaningless. Whereas with the Samsung Galaxy A11, even though the camera isn't exactly top tier, something I would actually want to use for a website or social media, the camera is so much better that I don't think the Cricut Influence has any advantage over the Samsung Galaxy A11 camera-wise. Another thing to keep in mind is the battery. If you're on the go a lot and don't like to have to charge your phone, or if you just don't have the opportunity to, the Samsung Galaxy A11 not only has a much bigger battery, but it also supports 15-watt fast charging, whereas the Cricut Influence doesn't support any fast charging. So if you want to charge your phone faster and have a battery that lasts longer, again, the Samsung Galaxy A11 is going to be the better device for you. But going back to the processing power, I do have to stress how impressive the Cricut Influence is as far as processing goes. This processor is so powerful for how much of an entry-level phone the Cricut Influence is, and it's going to be able to accomplish a lot more than you would reasonably expect from a phone that's this entry level. Another thing you might want to keep in mind is the stylistic differences. Now you can clearly see from the video how each device looks, but I will point out the Samsung Galaxy A11 does have a bit nicer and more modern look with the hole punch front-facing camera, having thinner bezels, a slightly larger screen, and just being more sleek in general. But on the other hand, I will say the difference in how they feel is pretty noticeable. The Samsung Galaxy A11, even though it looks nicer, does feel pretty cheap and slightly lower quality, whereas the Cricut Influence, even though it is still made of plastic, it doesn't feel as cheap, and it does feel a little bit better quality than the Samsung Galaxy A11. At the end of the day, it really comes down to personal preference and your specific needs. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, definitely leave a thumbs up and subscribe. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.